Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video on the Gooners and Gloves Podcast channel. In today's video, it's going to be the 80th Gooners and Gloves Podcast, and I'm going to be giving you guys my thoughts and reactions to the Caleb Plant and Jermall Charlo fights, starting off with Caleb Plant versus Jose Rezendiz, and then also giving you guys my thoughts on Jermall Charlo versus Thomas LaManna. So, all in all, it was a good night of boxing. It was two solid fights, and yeah, I'm just going to go on and give you guys my thoughts. So, starting off with Caleb Plant versus Rezendiz, obviously a massive upset by Rezendiz. My sincerest congratulations to Jose Rezendiz on a very well-deserved victory. A massive upset, completely proved me wrong and proved so many others wrong, and massive respect to Rezendiz. It was a fantastic performance, so well done. And yeah, you just have to give him massive props. Obviously, it's a massive upset, and he now becomes the new WBA interim world champion. So, massive props to him and his team. So, pretty much, I'm just going to go on and get straight into what I think that Rezendiz did well. So, first of all, obviously, the pressure. Now, this is exactly what I spoke about in my previous video talking about this fight. The pressure was always going to be a huge problem for Plant, and don't get me wrong, I thought that Plant would do a better job at avoiding it. Obviously, I did say how Plant has really good counter-punching, really good movement and footwork and stuff, and we saw little flashes of it, but for the most part, Rezendiz was just too powerful, too strong, came forward far too much. But not only that, but Rezendiz also did a fantastic job at cutting off the ring as well, which was really impressive to see because, as I said before, Plant does have good footwork and good head movement, so the fact that Rezendiz was able to really impose himself and cut the ring off was fantastic from him, and it's something that really helps to win in the fight, just that pressure. Not only that, but Rezendiz had a really good guard, a really tight, good guard, which definitely helped him out a lot. Obviously, it's something that, you know, in previous fights he's kind of struggled with, is to keep his guard like really tight, and he's definitely been hit in previous fights. However, props to him in this one, he was able to fix that up, and props to his team as well. They were able to really implement a fantastic game plan, and he kept a really tight guard, really good defense, and he was just very disciplined. It was a very disciplined, measured defensive performance, and it was important because obviously Rezendiz was coming in a lot. It was always, you know, it's clear that his corner always had the game plan for him to be pushing the action, push the fight, come in, and ultimately just fight on the inside. So for that reason, clearly his corner were aware that he needed to have a good guard, a good defense, and he couldn't allow himself to just get hit with silly shots. So he was able to defend really well. He had a fantastic guard, and it's something that Caleb Plant was really struggling with. You know, Caleb Plant was trying to get the jabs and the right hands going to try and keep Rezendiz at bay, but ultimately Rezendiz's guard was just too strong, too powerful. So he was able to use that guard to come forward, land fantastic shots, and ultimately just really wear Caleb Plant out throughout the fight and out hustle him. And that's just the thing. I think he really out hustled and outworked Caleb Plant. That's the most important thing. He out hustled him, he outworked him, and he was able to make it all the way to the scorecards. I did predict that the fight would go to the scorecards, but obviously I said Plant would win, not Rezendiz. So I got this one wrong, and you know, I can only say fair play to Rezendiz. It's a massive upset, and he fully deserved it. So yeah, those are really just the key talking points: the really good pressure, the really good guard, and ultimately just out hustling and outworking Plant. The hooks were also really good. Rezendiz has always had really good looping punches, hooks and uppercuts, and he definitely displayed that in this fight. Really good hooks to head and body, and also really good uppercuts to head and body. But to be fair, he displayed a pretty decent set of straight punches as well. You know, the jab, the right hand, I think he did well with those, you know, using the jab to get on the inside. You know, many people have a misconception that the jab is only for people trying to keep the other on the outside, but it's actually not true. Like, somebody who's trying to get on the inside can absolutely make use of the jab as well, and that's exactly what Rezendiz was doing, because obviously when you're jabbing the opponent, you know, they're going to move their hands out the way to block the jab. They're going to, you know, if you're jabbing to the body, they're going to bring their hands down to block the jab, and so on. And Rezendiz made really good use of that, and for that reason was able to come in with his looping shots like the hooks, the uppercuts, which were, you know, definitely hurting Caleb Plant. He did say after the fight he wasn't really that hurt, but he definitely was at several points. There's no doubt about that. But also fair play to Plant. At the end of the day, you know, he showed a lot of heart. Absolutely did show a lot of heart. He showed a lot of grit, and it was a great fight. So fair play to Caleb Plant as well for the grit and the determination that he showed. However, Jose Rezendiz absolutely earned that victory. It was a fantastic performance, a really good upset, and now this puts Rezendiz in a very good position. Obviously, unfortunately, this does completely pretty much ruin the possibility of getting Caleb Plant, which is Jermall Charlo, which really sucks. But at the end of the day, it is the risk that promoters take when they decide to do a fight on the basis of both fighters winning previous fights. This is the risk that happens, and unfortunately now it's looking like Plant Charlo won't happen. So I guess surely the obvious fight to make is Rezendiz versus Jermall Charlo instead. You'd imagine that's probably the obvious next fight to make, but of course we'll have to see what happens. But yeah, all in all, an entertaining fight, a very solid performance by Rezendiz. Really good guard, really good pressure, fantastic combinations, great hooks and uppercuts, and ultimately just really good cutting off the ring and out hustling and outworking Plant. Plant tried his best to use his footwork, his jab, his combinations. He showed some flashes of defiance, but for the most part, he was kept at bay. He was out hustled and ultimately outscored on the scorecards. So yeah, props to Rezendiz, a fantastic performance. I definitely really enjoyed watching him fight, and hopefully we can see more of him. And as I said, I think the obvious fight now is Jermall Charlo versus Jose Rezendiz, but we'll see what happens with that. But anyway, I don't want to ramble too much about this fight. All in all, a solid performance, fair play to Rezendiz, and his key strengths were his tight guard, his great combination punching, his hooks and uppercuts, cutting off the ring, and ultimately just out hustling and outworking, and also out wrestling. I forgot to mention, he was also doing really bad at out wrestling Caleb Plant in the clinch, which is really impressive because obviously Rezendiz is, a bit smaller than Plant, and Plant's just obviously massive in this weight class. Plant's huge in this weight class, so the fact that Rezendiz was able to really just out wrestle him and out hustle him in the clinch is really impressive stuff and shows how determined Rezendiz was to win. But anyway, that's going to go ahead and do it for the analysis of this fight. All in all, a solid fight, a great performance by Rezendiz, and a huge upset. And I'll now move on to Jermall Charlo versus Thomas LaManna. Okay guys, here we go. So I'm now on to Jermall Charlo versus Thomas LaManna. This was a really good performance by Jermall Charlo. His first fight back in 18 months and also his first fight at super middleweight, and he absolutely smashed it. It was a really good performance, completely just out hustled and outworked Thomas LaManna and was able to drop him 3 times before the fight was stopped in the 6th round. Obviously Jermall Charlo is massive at super middleweight. We saw that, and he really used that to his advantage. He's absolutely huge at this weight class, and he just looked so much bigger, so much stronger than Thomas LaManna, and ultimately was able to completely outbox him and ultimately just drop him 3 times and lead to the fight stoppage. So yeah, it was a really good performance by Jermall Charlo, and again, you'd imagine that now, he can, he's got the ring rust off now, so now he's going to start to be involved in the big fights again. But we could, as I said before, we could very well see the Jose Rezendiz fight now that Jose Rezendiz pulled off that upset. We'll have to see. So pretty much let's go on and get straight into the fight. So it was a really good performance. It was a very measured, very calculated performance by Jermall Charlo. I did say in the prediction video that Jermall Charlo has really good calculated combinations, really good power, and ultimately he's just able to use that to his advantage, and that's exactly what he did in this fight. So he was able to first drop Thomas LaManna with a great overhand right in the 3rd round. They were in the clinch, and just as the clinch was being let go, he found his opportunity and landed a beautiful overhand right to drop LaManna. It was a really good shot, really well placed, and yeah, brilliant shot, and it really set the tempo. Obviously by this point, Jermall Charlo had already imposed himself. He'd already hurt Thomas LaManna once, but I think at this point in the 3rd round is when the tempo for the fight completely got set, and that's because Jermall Charlo just after that knockdown just pretty much increased the tempo. He really increased the speed, increased the tempo to about 100 miles an hour, and really just started to be all over Thomas LaManna, which is understandable. Obviously Thomas LaManna was hurt. I'm not saying he was reckless or anything, he was still taking his time, but I mean he definitely sped up the tempo after that knockdown, and it paid off because in the very next round he knocked him down again. It was a really good 1-2 which landed. I think he also landed a really good left hook to the body and left hook to the head combination, which seemed like it dropped LaManna, but I think LaManna just about managed to stay up. Officially it wasn't ruled a knockdown, but either way it was a really hurting punch. So he slipped inside beautifully, landed a left hook to the body, came up, landed 2 left hooks to the temple, and was able to hurt Thomas LaManna. It was a really good left hook combination, so that was very good from Jermall Charlo. So yeah, that was a really good combination in round 4. So wasn't officially ruled a knockdown, but he basically did drop him. He was inches away from hitting the canvas, so it was pretty much a knockdown. At least in Jermall Charlo's mind, it was a knockdown because again he started to up the tempo. So already he'd gotten 2 knockdowns in rounds 3 and 4. Round 3, obviously he dropped him with the overhand right, and then in round 4 he dropped him with the 1-2 combination, and it didn't stop, as in the next round in round 5 he dropped him with a beautifully placed 1-2. Literally it was a jab, and then it was a right hand that was so hard that it split the guard of Thomas LaManna open and dropped him. Honestly, it just seemed like the sheer force of the right hand dropped him, because it did seem like Thomas LaManna got a block on the right hand. It did seem like he was able to block the right hand. However, the sheer force of Jermall Charlo's right hand was able to drop Thomas LaManna, and again that's going back to my previous point of obviously Jermall Charlo being so massive in this weight class. He's absolutely huge for a super middleweight, and he could definitely bully some of the division's biggest because he's massive. I mean, he's huge at this weight class, huge reach, huge height, and of course big weight, and he just looked so big in there, and he looked way bigger and way stronger than Thomas LaManna, and he made full use of that. So that brought an end to round 5 after the 1-2 combination, and then at the start of round 6, understandably the physician decided enough was enough and the fight was stopped. Jermall Charlo with his first knockout in about 6 years, I think, and his first fight back back and his first win back in about 18 months. So it's a really good performance by Jermall Charlo, put on a fantastic performance, really good display, really measured, really calculated, great combinations. He also just looked so relaxed in there. I think that's the big thing. Like, he looked really relaxed. You know, he was putting on pressure, but it's more what I like to refer to as calculated pressure. Like, it wasn't, for example, what Jose Rezendiz did against Caleb Plant, where it was a lot more like aggressive, sustained pressure. This was very calm, very calculated, very measured pressure, which basically broke down Thomas LaManna eventually. And I think that's the big thing here. He kind of more just broke him down and wore him out over time, as opposed to just going full speed ahead. He was still fast, don't get me wrong, but like, it was a lot more measured and calculated. He really just put together the combination, stayed disciplined, put together the good punches, and was eventually able to get the stoppage in round 6. So this one I actually did put it correctly. I said Jermall Charlo by knockout or technical knockout, and that's exactly what happened. So it feels good to have gotten one of them correct, especially after having gotten the previous one wrong. So felt good to end off on a high note and get one of them right. So all in all, a great performance by Jermall Charlo. Showed really good discipline, really good combination punches, just a very measured performance, landed fantastic shots, obviously dropped LaManna 3 times, firstly with the overhand right, then with the 1-2 combination, and then with the left hooks, 1 to the head, 2 to the body and 1 to the head. And yeah, fantastic performance, and hopefully we'll now see Jermall Charlo more active and in more fights. Obviously, it's not the end of Thomas LaManna. There's still other fights out there that he could take, but obviously it's a devastating loss, especially after having been on a 9-fight winning streak. But it just goes to show Jermall Charlo is just a really good fighter, and ultimately, despite being 18 months out, you know, he didn't look out of place for a second, and he now extends to, I think it's 34-0. So yeah, a great night of boxing. I really enjoyed both fights. So props to all 4 fighters, of course, as always, because at the end of the day, boxing is not easy, and anybody who does it gets respect. So massive respect to those 4 for putting us, giving us 2 great fights and a great night of boxing. But that's going to go ahead and do it for me. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I really enjoyed making this, and it feels good to have gotten a fight reaction out, because I haven't done a fight reaction in a long time. So it feels good to have finally gotten another fight reaction out. But anyway, I'll go ahead and catch you guys on another podcast soon. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for 80 Gooners and Gloves podcast. By the way, we're getting ever closer to that big 100, which I'm really looking forward to. But yeah, have a great day. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll catch you guys on another podcast soon. Bye bye.